WERQ-FM HD3 Baltimore, celebrating Radio 1's 42nd anniversary.
Our Radio 1 family, our employees, their family members, our listeners, our viewers, our extended family.
And serving the African American community for over 42 years.
The views and opinions of the guest and host you hear on 1010 WOLB
are not necessarily those of the staff and management of Radio 1, its sponsors, or advertisers.
As the road you travel changes, so can your insurance needs. Talking with Farmers Insurance Agent Ramona Jones McClain can help you assess whether you're ready for the journey ahead. Call Farmers Agent Ramona Jones McClain today at 443-660-7131. That's Ramona Jones McClain at 443-660-7131.
We are farmers. Bum, ba, bum, 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 bum.
Underwritten by Farmers Truck Fire Insurance Exchanges and Affiliates. Products not available in every state.
Hello, DMV. This is Ramona Jones McClain, your insurance guru. I am a farmer's agent located at 11707 Reisterstown Road in Reisterstown, Maryland. Here, you can call me at 443-660-7131 or listen to my show every Thursday at 3:30 p.m. on WOLB. Hello, welcome to the Insurance Guru Show, where we talk about all things insurance. My name is Ramona Jones McClain, and I'm a farmer's agent at 6 Hanover Road, Reisterstown, Maryland. You can call me anytime at 443-660-7131.
Hello, DMV. This is Ramona Jones, and I'm coming to you live from Reisterstown, Maryland, where we talk about all things insurance. Today, we are talking about two icons from history, as this is Women's History Month. We are celebrating powerful women, and today's topic is on Rosa Parks and Miss Doris Day. We got two different types of women, both from who were infamous for the things they did while they were on this earth. Both of them who died from some form of dementia and or Alzheimer's. These individuals, as we are talking about wills and estates and what it means to prepare and put the things in place as we leave this earth. And today's show is going to talk about how having a diagnosis such as Alzheimer's or dementia sort of mucks around with that. As we know, Rosa Parks passed away a few years ago, 2005, after being diagnosed with Alzheimer's for 1 year. Even though she did not have a large financial estate, she had extreme amount of keepsakes, collectibles that were donated to a museum for the purpose of raising funds for a foundation that she had set up. Because she had Alzheimer's, her family used this as a reason to protest or to fight against her will, because the will was done later in life versus earlier. I have a guest with me, Dr. Matthew Jones, who's here with me today to talk about his family member, his mother, who had Alzheimer's, and how when you're preparing for the end of life, how that can make whether even if you have a will in place or if you have life insurance, how that can complicate things and make it a little bit more elaborate when you are preparing to resolve your time on this earth. And then, of course, we have the expert, Attorney Nicholas Mcdaniels, is here with us from McDaniel and Lewis to provide his expert information as we break this down for you. Hello, Dr. Jones.
Good afternoon. How are you doing?
All right.
I'm delighted.
Tell us about your mother.
I'm delighted to be on your talk show today. I appreciate your efforts and the services that you provided. And
Thank you.
And you said that the great women, I think that maybe my mother should be added to one of those great women that are on your show today.
Absolutely. Gertrude Jones. Absolutely.
Gertrude Jones. Lil is known. Lil is known in 1937, the year that my oldest brother was born. She had gone to Mississippi and coming back, and she didn't have a seat, and she took a seat in the front, and they tried to ask her to get up, and she refused to get up, and that was 1937.
All right.
So she was one of those type of women that were very strong, forceful, and demanding. Fortunately, she was that way because of at age 14, when I was 14, of course, I had 6 siblings younger than me and 7 older than me. But at age 14, my father died, and she had to take over hundreds of acres of operation and supervise that herself. So she insists, my father was a college graduate, and she insists that every one of us were going to school. And so she managed to at one time, had 5 or 6 of us in college at the same time. So I suppose, and that, in spite of the fact that she was, of course, maintaining the operation of the farm we raised at that time, cotton and had a lot of cotton and corn. And I like to always testify that my last year on the farm, I raised 500 chickens, 100 head of turkeys, 100 head of pigs. So it was quite challenging. Of course, it was challenging in that we didn't have a high school. So once we passed the age of 15, more likely my older siblings had already left to go off to high school. Some going in different areas. And ultimately, it came my turn, and I ended up finishing high school and lived with one of my oldest sisters in Memphis, Tennessee. So I finished Mitchell Road, they called it, the Mitchell Road High School. But my mother, her mother, my grandmother, Ethel, had Alzheimer's. So it was kind of like a genetic thing that went within the family. She had Alzheimer's, and sometimes it affects people very young. And she was my grandmother was one of those persons who was affected very young. So she died from it when she was quite young. And my grandmother virtually raised my mother until she pretty aggressively went out on her own at a young age. But she kept the operation going and ran it for many years, and she deemed it necessary, even though I had several brothers and several. Doesn't matter if it was 7. It was 7 older than me. She made me the executive of the estate. So, and I, even until this day, I managed to try to coordinate my brothers. I got a couple of brothers who running their farm down in Arkansas right now, but they constantly, even this day and yesterday, constantly giving me information about what's going on and the decisions that I need to make in reference to the operation. However, she started having an Alzheimer's effect, I suppose, when she was about 70. It's around 70. Mm-hmm. It started slowing her down. But she maintained the operation. She maintained the operation at the time, and of course by that time, by 70, several of us had finished college. I had finished college, and we by that time I had gone to Chicago and was working in Chicago, and she was still holding out from. And then it was around when she turned about 80, it really took a major effect on her. About 80 years old. And that time she ultimately ended up living with she first went to California because I had two sisters that actually went to college in California. So she actually ended up in California with one of my oldest sisters out there where she lived. And eventually I decided it would have been better for her to live here in Maryland. So I brought her back here to Maryland and to live in my assisted living facility that we have in Catonsville. So that I'm presently operating at this day. So it was there that she spent her last days, and it was there. One thing that she, we had Cajun Southern was one of her uncles, one of her mother's one of her grandmother's brother, and he had a large farm in outside of Jackson, Mississippi, and he had a burning oil well way back in that day that was out there, and usually during the Christmas time, it would take us to go to Mississippi to see those relatives, and Cajun Southern was he also owned the farm. He also was a pastor, and so she often referred to me as Little Cajun, Little Cajun Southern. Yeah, I'm talking about her uncle. So when she had
when she had Alzheimer's, and after she passed.
No, after she wanted to know who when she lived in my facility, and if you ask her who I am, she may not remember that I was Matthew Jones, but she will always say, "Oh, I know who you are. You're a Little Cajun." So she tends to maintain that memory from way back. Yeah. And that's what Alzheimer's sometimes do. People can remember stuff that are way back when they can't remember things at the moment.
By the time she got to the assisted living facility, was her will already done?
Oh, that was done. That was done considerably much earlier than that.
Maybe in the 50s?
No. That was basically, it was done around 1970, 65.
Okay.
1965 or 70, when all the siblings came together. See, we had a family reunion every year during that time. Every year we had family reunions, and when we came together, they decided that she structured the thing that, number one, that the property could never be sold, and number two, that there was a demand, the way it's designed it, that it couldn't be divided up. See, one of the difficult things with the dividing of the property, that you have that many siblings, 14 of us. Anyone could decide that I want to sell my portion.
Right.
I want to give it. Matter of fact, being the administrator of it, I had that kind of encounter periodically. Some of my siblings want to sell that portion and stuff, but
How difficult has it been to maintain that, knowing that, have they used the fact that she had Alzheimer's as a reason to try to go against her wishes on that?
No, she did not. When that was done, Alzheimer's was not part of the issue. She was not experiencing it Alzheimer's when we came together. Matter of fact, we came together as a family, and everybody agreed to set this up. All the siblings agreed to set this up this way at that time.
Okay, and, we got a caller. I think Brother Charles or Mr. Charles.
Yes, how you doing? It's Charles.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had a question. I wanted to know what happened to the natural law, because when we used to, have inheritance and stuff like that, there was natural law where the firstborn son, and then da-da-da-da-da-da. So I'm wondering what happened to natural law, and how do we get this new fangled law?
Well, that was biblical. Biblical, it was usually the firstborn son, but Jacob was not the firstborn son. Matter of fact, it was flipped even in the biblical times. So that was, but that's the parents always had the opportunity to decide on who they want to make the executive of the estate or whatever. Oh, I had, like I said, it was 7 older than me. 7 older than me. But when my father died, I had to be, I was still going to school that morning. I had to deal with some pigs and hogs and stuff. So when I finished getting them back into the pen, I went into the house where my father was, and he basically told me that, what he expected. There was something, I don't know, they saw in me that he saw in me and my mother saw in me that I would be the one to be able to coordinate the maintaining of this better than all of the others, even though my oldest brother, and I had 3, that was Eric, Harvey, and Joe, the boys that was older than me. Mm-hmm. So, but they decided, and even that day he called me in and he says, I won't be here when you come back from school, but I want you to know there are 4 basic things I want you to always remember throughout your life. And one of the things he said to me, whenever crisis comes, I will be always present. And that have been a documented, evidential experience that I've had periodically in my life. So that's a tradition, biblical tradition that he just mentioned, and not a legal one.
Right, Mr. McDaniels.
But doesn't the biblical come before the legal? Isn't the legal the hijack?
Well, the principles of God should guide the legal aspect, but we know that that's not the case.
Right, because we say should, and should is not a affirmative action. Should is a theory.
Well, I'm gonna let the attorney on the line weigh in.
Yeah, but if that was the case, Mona, if that was the case, if the principle, the biblical principle had been established, if that was the case, and we'd never been in captivity and slavery. I rest my case.
Are you sure you want to weigh in on this, Mr. McDaniel?
Yeah, I was going to say I might be jumping into pretty deep waters here, Miss Ramona. But Dr. Jones, it's really great to hear your story and everything else. I mean, to maybe directly answer the caller's question without getting into what it should be. I think what I'm here to do is to at least say what it is right now, and then we can talk about whether that's right or not in a different discussion. But when we like to talk about kind of wills and estate planning and why they're important, and we talked about this last week, is really making sure that your wishes, if that may be to leave everything to your firstborn son or something like that, are actually exercised. But if you die without a will, the state has laws that kick in and that pretty much determine what happens to your belongings, what happens to your estate in that instance, if you have not left that last will and testament that gives a plan for that. And it's a pretty simple recipe for it, but as a general term, I mean, if you pass away and you are married at the time, everything goes to your widow or widower. And this is if you don't have a will. If you are not married or there is no surviving spouse, then everything gets left to your children. If you don't have any surviving children, then everything goes to your siblings. If you don't have any siblings, then everything goes to your parents, or those two can be flipped around at times. But then nieces, nephews, aunts, uncles, so on and so forth, until you may be somebody who's what we call kind of dying without kin. And at that point, the property goes through to the state, essentially, and that is through a process called escheat, which is a very funny legal word. We never really come across that too often, but it does happen on occasion. So I do think, actually, maybe to bring it back around to the caller's questions, and I think Dr. Jones is really insightful commentary on that. In a lot of ways, that is somewhat, though with the spouse kind of inserted as the primary, based a little bit on kind of how the biblical laws of succession were to allow property to flow. However, it would be split amongst all of your children and not just the firstborn. As a firstborn son myself, I guess I could take umbrage with that on occasion, but I'm sure my brother is happy to know that the laws are as they are when the time comes.
Okay, thank you so much for calling. So,
I have a question. I have always tend to recommend that revocable trust be very effective in setting up your estate. I would like to have the legal respond to the difference in having a will and a revocable trust or trust. I know a trust is difficult to change after it is set up, but what about a revocable trust where the trustee, the person in charge of the property named the trustee, and that would follow them? So, and I'd like to get a reaction on that. But I've always favored a revocable trust over a will.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's an excellent question. I do think those are becoming a lot more popular, and we're seeing a lot more people kind of move into that direction of wanting trusts, either they're revocable or irrevocable trust while they're living, what we call inter vivos trusts, or trusts that are made while a person is still alive. That's opposed to a testamentary trust. That would be a trust that gets created upon your death to maybe benefit your heirs. And a lot of people are using these things for some sort of a tax benefit or a tax shelter, typically. Or, we get calls occasionally to have those created to kind of protect from potential liability or creditors. I mean, if you're in a particular business, let's say you're an anesthesiologist. I'm trying to think of, and Ms. Ramona can tell you from an insurance perspective, there's probably no one that an insurance agency in terms of medical malpractice wants to insure less than an anesthesiologist, because they have the power really to kind of create the ultimate harm very quickly, and they flirt with that line as part of their profession. But let's say that, I would get a client that would call me who is in that position where they have significant potential liabilities just because of what they do for a living. Sometimes placing some of their assets in trust could shield it from that liability, in the same way that we have people set up limited liability companies instead of just operating as a sole proprietorship. The advice that I give to a lot of people is, oftentimes people will call and want to set up a trust because they've read about it a little bit. Sometimes it can be cost prohibitive. And in fact, most times I advise people that maybe at this stage in their life or with the assets they have, it's not necessarily the best way to go, because I kind of use between $50,000 and $100,000 as a threshold. If you were to have less than that amount, the cost of maintaining that trust, having usually most people end up hiring a corporate trustee or something like that. It doesn't necessarily the cost of it makes it so that it's not worth the potential growth or the protection that you get out of it. Revocable trusts are going to be a little bit more restrictive in how they can be set up and how they can be used. That is because they are ultimately more flexible. And so it's a lot, though it is easier, I suppose, to put assets in and take assets out. The types of assets that you can put into those trusts, I think, are a little bit more limited or a little bit more challenging than a irrevocable trust, which essentially means that you are putting that property into the holding or into the trust of someone else or some other entity, so that it can then benefit somebody else later. You no longer really have power over that anymore, but it does serve that purpose of, one, shielding it from potential creditors, potential liabilities, but also shielding it from estate taxes. And people use that as kind of an estate planning tool to make sure that that property gets distributed, not through the probate or the will process. So I know that was a long answer to probably a very short and clear question, but I hope, Dr. Jones, that kind of laid the landscape a little bit.
Are you doing any work with any individuals that desire a revocable trust?
I do. I mean, a few. I mean, some clients that I have who are.
This meeting is being recorded.
Heavy holdings in real estate or something like that they want to make sure that those things are secured in trust, but also if they are the types of people who are going to be wanting to buy and sell and maybe manage those assets a little bit differently, that they would be seeking a revocable trust. So I do see, Dr. Jones, I think Ms. Ramona's feed got jammed up here a little bit. So it looks like it is us at this point. So, I mean, I think we can maybe keep going back and forth, but I do know that Ms. Ramona wanted to talk a little bit more about the issues with kind of end of life planning and dementia and things like that. So you had mentioned some things about those issues with your family and how that was handled. And I would be interested to hear a little bit more about how that was, how that kind of dementia or Alzheimer's, maybe I believe is what you were referring to, how that impacted kind of that end of life planning process, if it did have any impact.
Well, due to the fact that there were action taken earlier, and ultimately she actually ended up passing in my facility in 1999. Everything, she had already set up everything probably about 25 years earlier, how we were going to structure the existing, there was quite a bit of land. And she did not want it to be divided up and separated and sold in part.
And so she was able to plan for a lot of that before the mental decline happened, which is, I mean, important. And I think that's in a lot of ways very fortunate that you all were able to do that as a family, because I do deal with people often that aren't so fortunate and are trying to kind of deal with things when maybe there's a question about whether somebody's mental capacity has slipped a little bit too far to being able to make those large decisions.
I think it probably was due to the fact that we were having, the whole family were coming together every year. We have a family reunions, and these discussions came up real early, during the family reunion, what we want to do, how we want to have it, how things will be developed. And there was a time when all of the family members agreed and consented to setting it up this way.
And I think that's tremendously helpful when families are able to discuss that. I mean, one of the things that Ms. Ramona and I talked about last week was just so many families' reluctance to have those discussions. And people just put it off and don't want to talk about it out in the open. And it sounds like your family was open about that, and that really made the process a lot easier for you. So we try to encourage that, but I think that's hard to do. So I appreciate you telling everyone to listen.
Also, it may have been because of he had to take over the operation. She was relative. She was just 40-some years old when my father died. And she had to take over the operation herself then.
So she understood what it was like to have to pick up the pieces quickly and didn't want anyone else to have to do that. And that's, it's a shame that that's a lesson to learn the hard way, but I'm glad she didn't pass that tradition, forward to you all. So, Ms. Ramona, you back live?
Yes, I don't know what happened, but thank you so much for carrying on. I heard you the whole time, Mr. McDaniels.
hey, look, I tried to throw it back to my old college radio days there to see what it remembered like hosting a show. So I tried to pinch hit for a minute, but it wasn't the same without you for a few seconds.
Absolutely, and I think the reason why we had this, why I invited Dr. Jones on, so we could show the benefits of what, how important it is to do effective planning up front. And the fact that with the examples of Rosa Parks and Doris Day, if you look at their situation, in both of those families, because there wasn't open communication, even though there was a will, one was done late in life, one was done early in life, without the open communication, it allowed their family to protest against what was in the will because they didn't hear it from the horse's mouth. But we're going to take a break for station identification. When you come back, we're going to keep talking about the importance of preparing your loved ones early, and Alzheimer's, and why that's important. And then we come back in a few minutes. Thank you.
WOLB Baltimore and WERQ FM HD3 Baltimore, celebrating Radio 1's 42nd anniversary.
Our Radio 1 family, our employees, their family members, our listeners, our viewers, our extended family.
And serving the African American community for over 42 years.
The views and opinions of the guest and host you hear are not necessarily those of the staff and management of Radio 1, its sponsors, or advertisers.
As the road you travel changes, so can your insurance needs. Talking with Farmers Insurance Agent Ramona Jones McClain can help you assess whether you're ready for the journey ahead. Call Farmers Agent Ramona Jones McClain today at 443-660-7131. That's Ramona Jones McClain at 443-660-7131.
We are farmers. Bum, ba, bum, 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 bum.
Underwritten by Farmers, Truck Fire Insurance Exchanges and Affiliates. Products not available in every state.
Hello, DMV. This is Ramona Jones McClain, your insurance guru. I am a farmer's agent located at 11707 Reisterstown Road in Reisterstown, Maryland. Here, you can call me at 443-660-7131 or listen to my show every Thursday at 3:30 p.m. on WOLB.
This is Ramona Jones McClain, and today we are talking about Alzheimer's and estate planning. As we know, Alzheimer's or dementia is a deterioration of your ability to reason, to make decisions, to use your brain as it functions in a rational state of mind. It can affect whether or not you are making decisions based on good judgment. And it is a medical condition that there is no cure for. And over 3 million people suffer from it on any given day. It is something that is known to be genetic, possibly, but there are things that you can do to delay and or reduce the chance of suffering from Alzheimer's. One of the things I was reading about the other day, of course, diet and nutrition are everything. You want to eat those vegetables and things that promote good health, as well as a good night's sleep. One of the signs is, are you sleeping too much or are you sleeping too little? This is important when you are communicating to others what you want to do with your estate. After you have gone from here, who you want to get what, who should be in charge of making sure that the decisions that you wanted to be made are made. Who's going to be the guardian of your children? Who's going to continue to run your business after you leave here? There are many different vehicles, all related to this. Last will and testament, as the attorney talked about several times, it is a testate. It is a testament to what you desire after you leave here. A irrevocable or a revocable living trust. And these are both vehicles where you can move. It is a trust is a legal entity in and of itself where you can move property, into it, and it will control it and maintain it. Of course, you have to fund the trust, so you have to have life insurance so that the funds can be in there to financially do the things that you want to do. Today we have with us Dr. Matthrew L. Jones, who has been giving us a testament of his experience when his mother passed with Alzheimer's, and we have the attorney Nick Mcdaniels. Nick, give us the information where we can find you.
Yeah, thanks, Ms. Ramona. 2 weeks in a row. So glad to be back here, and it's great to be on here with Dr. Jones too. I've really enjoyed that. So my name is Nicholas Mcdaniels. I'm an attorney. Our main headquarters is in Frederick, Maryland. We do a lot of work in the Baltimore metro area as well. You can find us on the web at www.lewismcdaniels.com. That's LEWISMCDANIELS. And you can also reach me or my partner, Ryan Lewis, at 301-818-0405. That's 301-818-0405.
Excellent. So Dr. Jones brought up the revocable living trust. And this is something that you actually put in place while you're still on this earth. And while you're here, you have control of the trust. Or do you designate that up front to someone else?
Yeah, so I'll let you, Dr. Jones. I mean, I know you have some experience with it, but I think we were about to say the exact same thing. You designate that to someone else. I mean, in the state of Maryland, we do not do self-settled trusts in any way like you can. I believe there are some states where you can do that, but essentially, we don't allow people to commit tax fraud by designating self-settled trusts. In other words, just kind of creating a shell company for your own assets. We don't allow people to do that. So you would need to designate others to serve in that capacity as trustee. And then it becomes a little bit sticky on how much you can even set it up so that it can just be essentially almost like a separate bank account for you. I mean, these assets do need to kind of be protected, and you can't just essentially use a trust account as just a separate account for you and make the trustee do whatever you want and write checks for you and things like that either. So, Dr. Jones, is that probably about what you were going to say as well?
Yeah.
You also can't move property in and out of it. Once the property goes in, it has to stay in.
So for the trustee will have the power, and this would be true of other types of trusts too, to make exchanges of assets. I mean, they have a duty to the beneficiaries of the trust to do what is in their best interest, that fiduciary duty that we talk about oftentimes. But they would be able to buy and sell property. They would be able to invest. They would be able to hire professionals to help manage those funds. As the trustee, yeah, and essentially, I mean, ideally, grow the trust and increase the assets.
Okay, and how difficult is it to set it up?
Yeah, I was going to say, Dr. Jones, for me, it's very easy. I'm just drafting papers, so I think it's probably a better question for somebody who's maybe been on the other end of that, because, as the attorney, our job is to create the trust instrument, so the actual document that governs the trust. But that's only a small piece of the whole puzzle, so Dr. Jones can give you probably a better answer there.
Well, how much it costs? I think the factor that we face generally in trying to set up this revocable trust.
Yeah, so I mean, how much does it cost to draft the instrument or something like that? So you're going to pay an attorney to draft the trust instrument. That is going to depend on exactly how detailed the trust is or how complicated it is. I mean, anywhere between
how large it is, the size of the trust,
the complexity of the beneficiary structure, things like that. I mean, that's, anywhere probably from the bare minimum, maybe $1,500 to $7,500 probably if it's super complicated. I mean, I think I generally, ones that I've prepared in the past, kind of range on the low end, like I said, in that $1,500 range. And probably the most expensive one I've ever done ended up being around $5,000. But I generally maybe am a little bit on the cheaper end than some other attorneys as well, too. I'm sure you could easily spend a 5-figure number, and more often than not, that's worth it. I mean, if you're spending $10,000 to prepare an accurate trust document, that's probably because you have substantial assets to where this trust document is very necessary. So that $10,000 probably won't feel to you like it certainly would feel to me.
To you and everybody else.
Regular folks like us, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so this trust will this trust allow you to skip probate?
And so the answer is yes. I mean, that's probably the biggest value in creating an inter vivos trust or a living trust, because it will allow those assets to essentially already be in an estate-like structure. I mean, the trust is similar in function to how an estate functions, but it doesn't have to go through the probate or the estate process. Then that trust is the assets are already kind of designated for beneficiaries. And I see lots of people doing that nowadays, is wanting to kind of set up those structures before they pass away. I see plenty of people nowadays too, kind of already making distributions to who they want their beneficiaries to be while they're still living. And I really support that logic and reasoning. It's nice if you're a parent or a grandparent to be able to make gifts to those people who you would ultimately be leaving things to anyway. So you get to see them enjoy it while you're still living. And I really support that. I have a lot of clients who are doing that, as long as you can, promise that they won't squander it. I wouldn't drop $25,000 on a 17-year-old, but to be able to see your kids actually benefit from the thing is something that I find my clients see as a source of real joy, and that's a nice way to bypass the probate process as well.
Right. Which the probate process can kind of extend the dissemination of asset period out 2, 3, 6, 12 months.
Yeah, I think 6 to 12 is probably pretty accurate in a lot of ways. And
last week we talked about Aretha Franklin, and we are 3 years out from her death, and they are still her 4 boys are still waiting to get anything from her estate.
Yeah, that's a matter of years and not months.
Right.
That does happen in very complicated cases, but it doesn't have to be somebody with, Aretha Franklin's wealth either. I mean,
no.
If it were to be contested wills or an issue where it would go through litigation. I mean, I've dealt with or been involved in cases that, have dragged on for 3, 4, 5 years. And, by the time you get to the end of that road, people in fancy suits with briefcases like me end up eating all the money anyway, and there's nothing left for anybody else. And that's what we want to try to avoid, because if you give lawyers like us enough time, we will take all the money. I promise you. So you try to avoid dealing with us as much as possible on the back end if you deal with us correctly on the front end.
So we want to take the example of the great Gertrude Jones, who brought all her children together in one arena and literally set them down and said, this is what we are going to do. This is how we are going to do it. And this is what's going to happen when I'm not here. And because she did it early enough on, she had the conversation, even though she had Alzheimer's, unlike Doris Day and Rosa Parks, whose families are still talking about what they didn't get and what they didn't know. Of course, these were superstars and people who were infamous. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that their attorneys and accountants and representatives were shielding the fact that they had dementia or Alzheimer's And so they were also shielding them away from family. But they did not have the discussions that needed to be had or do the things that need to be done. Unlike the great Gertrude Jones. Okay, and this is important. It's important. We always talk about you got to do a will, you have to get life insurance, but this is the rest of it, the other piece of it, in order to now allow this transition to be smooth and relaxing and easy. And even with medical conditions and situations that come up, you need to make your wishes and your ideas and your plans plain, so that everyone involved, so that there's no discussion. I have an aunt that lives in Virginia, and every time I talk to her, she is telling me about what is supposed to be going on at her funeral, where she's supposed to be buried, and who she's supposed to be buried by, and what we are supposed to be doing. And usually this is when somebody else has died. She was like, don't do that. I don't want that. This is what I want you to do. Every time she is talking about it. And I'm just thinking, okay. But I can honestly say, having lost someone, it is preparing me for the time when she is not here. Because we can't avoid it. It's going to happen to everybody.
Yeah, but I like your point, Ms. Ramona. I mean, being able to talk about it, and you know, I love, I guess, Miss Gertrude and your auntie down in Virginia and everything else. I mean, just having that courage to talk about it. I mean, that's setting such a great example, because it is inevitable, and being able to be open and honest about those things and really be thoughtful about them so that people know what needs to happen is helpful for everybody. It gives you peace of mind, you know, as you age. It gives, you know, and it gives your beneficiaries after you pass kind of that peace of mind of knowing, hey, you know, I did what mom wanted me to do, or I did what my auntie wanted me to do. And that's, you know, that's really tough when that isn't mapped out, is because you're trying to do the best that you can, but you never know if that's what they would have wanted, or you're trying to convince yourself that that's what they wished for. And if you know, that makes it nice. You yourself as a grieving, you know, a person who's lost someone gets to know, hey, we did right by dad, or, you know, we did what he wanted and told us he wanted. And that's helpful too. And you know, we think about our children, and we don't want them being burdened with that when we're gone. We'd like them to feel proud about how they sent us off on our homecoming, right?
Yes, because we danced in the street. Yay! Well, I want to thank you guys for being on this week. Thank you, Dr. Jones. Dr. Jones is the pastor of Concord Baptist Church, located at 5204 Liberty Heights. He's also the owner of Sister Living Facility in Catonsville, Home Again 2, over on 601 Aldershot Road, where you can always find a pleasant place to be at home. If you have a loved one who is in their senior years and needs a residence, you can always call Dr. Jones. Give him your number, Dr. Jones.
Yeah, and I'm also the host of There's a Place, and I'll take you there on Praise 106.1. And that place is home ownership and self-employment. That's the experience that I came up with. That's why I selected the Staples Singers song that said that there's a place and I'll take you there.
Mm-hmm.
We encourage those individuals. It's a mentorship program where we're focusing on attempting to encourage people to employers and churches and business to work together to help individuals who are unable to have their own home, to mentor them who are unable to start their own jobs, to mentor them in doing so, and provide them with legal information and support information so that they understand how to create and work around that God-given talent that they have. We believe if everybody is given something special And
absolutely.
If they capitalize on that special something that they have been given, then most of us can be successful.
Mm-hmm.
My number is 443-695-8993.
All right. And Dr. Jones is my father, just in case nobody knew. Okay. And Gertrude Jones is my grandmother.
And you are Luger. You forceful like she is. You are Luger.
Mr. McDaniels, please give out your information again.
Absolutely, Mr. Mona. So Lewis McDaniels Law Firm in Frederick, Maryland, www.lewismcdaniels.com. You can shoot me an email, Nick, that's Nick, at lewismcdaniels.com, or just give us a call, talk to one of the wonderful people in our office, 301-818-0405. That's 301-818-0405. Always love being on with you and your dear father, Dr. Jones. It's great to be on with you as well. And we had a nice, 45 seconds just alone together on here too. And I think we did just fine. I think we did okay. And I really appreciate it. So thank you.
You were calling me about trust and revocable trust. I have your telephone number, so I will be passing it on.
Have to come out. Maybe we'll come out and get something together at the church and do something with the congregation. Make sure everybody's taken care of. Would love to do that. So.
Maybe you can have them on your show, Daddy.
Yes. We on every Saturday at 11 o'clock. Every Saturday.
Yeah.
I can make time. I got nothing scheduled.
Yeah. So listen. So next week we're going to be talking about another famous female. Okay, and we're going to be still on life insurance, still talking about what to do to prepare, and in situations where, like today was about Alzheimer's, and situations, and just so I want to recap the things, you don't know if someone's going to get Alzheimer's, but the key, I think, in making sure that it's not a will that's being protested is to number one, sit down with your family early and go over what you want. Number two, don't wait till you're 90 years old to make your will like Doris Day did. Okay? Do it early, make your intentions plain, and surround yourself with people you can trust and be comfortable with, which was her situation too. Her family said that her representatives did not allow them to even get anywhere near her. Same thing with Rosa Parks. They kind of shielded her at the end, probably protecting her image because she was an icon. But you can't protect your image from your family. Like the situation going on with Bruce Willis now in the media, where he has a degenerative form of dementia. And I felt like they should have protected him in 2022 when they allowed him to make like 20 movies in 1 year, where he literally said one line per movie. They should have protected him from doing that because those are horrible. But he's surrounded with his family. They're having discussions, and hopefully they will do some effective estate planning so we don't have to send Nick McDaniels out there. Isn't that right, Nick?
Exactly. Deal with it on the front end so you don't have to deal with us on the back end, right?
Yeah, we're going to send you to take care of Bruce in Hollywood.
Hey, that works. That works for me. I think I can make it out there.
Absolutely. So listen, if you have questions or concerns, you can always call the office at 443-660-7131. We still got a couple minutes left. If anybody wants to call in for a question, we're at 410-481-1010. And if you need to discuss your life insurance, if you want to talk about a will, if you want to put together a trust, or just a power of attorney, I think when people, having gone through the experience myself, when our loved ones start to get up in age or they start to get sick, I needed to put a power of attorney in place immediately for my husband when he got sick. Now, I didn't know it was going to end up being as bad as it was, but I had the notary to come up to the hospital so I could have the financial and the medical power of attorney in place. So there would be no question of who was supposed to be making the decisions when something happened. These are all a part of the process of preparing for our end-of-life path. And these are things that you need to have in place so that the things that you want get done the way you want it. If you don't want to be put on life support, somebody needs to know. We're going to talk about that a little bit more, too, in the next coming weeks. What is that called, Mr. McDaniel? It's called
advanced directives. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, very important. Honestly, wills are very important, but I think an advanced directive is equally as important, particularly with the way that our healthcare system operates in this country, and being able to see the way that people are treated in our healthcare system without advanced directives, because not often are they getting the best care or the care that they would necessarily want, or certainly the care that Dr. Jones can provide with his assisted living services as well, right?
Absolutely. I think that I think that if you honestly, I think that if you function under the auspices that the doctors know best, then you are fooling yourself. I think that even when they tell you something, you need to go Google it. At this day and age, you don't have to go to the library and pull out the medical encyclopedias. And all you have to do is speak the word into your phone, and it'll bring up everything out there on whatever is going on so that you can make the best decision. And this is really, all of these shows is all about making the best decision, making that decision known, and making it easy for those who need to follow your instructions. Just really, really, really that simple. All right, so we're going to wrap it up because I was told that I was going off the air too late. So it's 4:26, guys, and we are going to wrap it up this Thursday. We will be back next Thursday talking more and more and more about the things that are important to you and how it relates back to insurance. Everything, just so you know, everything relates back to insurance. There is an insurance for everything. Everything. All right, so we will see you next week. Thank you so much. This is Ramona Jones McClain, your insurance guru, and we are out.
Talk in the day. Soul at night on the new 1010 WOLB.